I always thought my life was pretty ordinary. My name is Jake, and I'd like to think I was a decent husband. I was married to Lisa for about 5 years. We met in college. She was a cheerleader, and I was the quiet guy on the sidelines. We fell in love quickly, fueled by late-night study sessions and weekend parties. Everything seemed perfect until it didn't, and that's when the cracks started to show. From the outside, we looked like a classic couple. We both held stable jobs, Lisa as a marketing manager and I worked as a software developer. We had our little house in a decent neighborhood and life was comfortable. But I started sensing something was off about a year ago. Lisa began changing her routines, coming home late from work, dressing more provocatively, and acting a bit distant. I brushed it off as the stress of her job. I remember telling myself that everyone goes through phases and things would balance out. But the nagging feeling wouldn't go away. I started to notice other signs. She was getting fewer calls from friends, more work events that I couldn't attend, and she became increasingly secretive with her phone. Once I saw a notification from a guy named Mark pop up, and she quickly snatched her phone away without letting me see who it was. I shrugged it off, thinking maybe it was a work colleague or something harmless. But deep down, a bad feeling crept in. Then came the day that shattered my world. It was a Friday evening, and I had decided to surprise Lisa by coming home early with her favorite takeout. As I stepped through the door, I heard laughter coming from the back of the house. It was strange because Lisa rarely had friends over during the week. I tiptoed down the hallway, curious and excited to see who she was with. But when I peeked around the corner, my heart dropped. There she was, lounging on the couch, giggling with none other than my tennis coach, Brian. They were too close for comfort, and the sight of their intimate laughter made my stomach churn. I stood frozen, trying to process what I was witnessing. I had always trusted Lisa, but seeing her this way with someone else made everything come crashing down. It felt surreal, like I was in a bad soap opera. I didn't want to confront them then and there. Part of me wanted to give her a chance to explain, but the image of them together burned in my mind. I turned around and walked back to my car, my heart racing and my hands shaking. I needed to think. That night I barely slept. I kept replaying the scene in my head, trying to come up with reasons for what I'd seen. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe they were just friends. But deep down I knew the truth. The betrayal was unmistakable. By morning, I resolved to confront Lisa and get the answers I deserved. The confrontation was explosive. I came home that Saturday, my heart pounding. The moment I opened the door, I called out her name. She walked into the living room looking surprisingly calm, as if she had no idea what I had seen. "Hey, babe, you're home early," she chirped. "Yeah, about that," I replied, my voice steady but filled with tension. "We need to talk." I could see the shift in her demeanor, her smile fading as she sensed the seriousness in my tone. "What's wrong?" she asked, feigning innocence. I couldn't contain my anger anymore. I laid it all out on the table, the phone calls, the late nights, the surprise I had witnessed. Lisa's face went white, and for a moment she looked genuinely caught off guard. But then she switched gears, putting on a defensive facade. "Jake, you're being ridiculous. Brian and I are just friends. You know how competitive I am about tennis. We were just practicing." She shot back, her eyes flashing with annoyance. I could hear the lies dripping from her words, and it made me furious. I pressed on, demanding the truth. "Don't lie to me, Lisa. I know what I saw." But she continued to deny everything, weaving a web of excuses that made my head spin. Eventually, I ran out of steam, feeling utterly defeated. I just wanted her to admit it, to show some remorse. Instead, she just huffed and rolled her eyes at me, treating my feelings like they were inconsequential. After I walked out of that confrontation, I was left with a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, sadness, betrayal, all of it crashed over me like a tidal wave. I thought about the vows we had taken and how easily she tossed them aside for a moment of excitement with my tennis coach. It shattered me. I spent the rest of the day aimlessly driving around, trying to clear my head. I pulled into a park, sat on a bench, and let the tears flow. Thoughts raced through my mind. How could she do this to me? Was this all a lie? I felt like a fool, and it hurt more than I could express. But as the hours passed, something began to shift within me. I realized that I had two choices: to wallow in this pain or to rise above it. I had always been a bit passive in our marriage, letting Lisa dominate most decisions. Maybe it was time to reclaim my life. It was a hard decision to make, but ultimately I chose to focus on myself, my growth, and my happiness. From that moment on, I knew I had to take control of my future. I didn't want to just be a victim of her betrayal. I wanted to be a champion of my own life. After that crushing confrontation, I went home and sat in silence for hours. The house felt foreign, like a shell of the life we had built together. Lisa returned later, and I could see her veneer of confidence crack as she entered the room. She tried to act normal, but I could sense her anxiety. It was as if she was waiting for me to bring it up again, to push her further into a corner where she would have to confront the truth. But I didn't want to engage in a pointless argument. Instead, I spent that night plotting my next moves. I felt consumed by a mix of anger and determination. I had been so passive in our relationship, always accommodating her desires and needs. Now, it was time to focus on myself and turn this betrayal into something positive. The next day, I woke up early and hit the tennis courts where I had first met Brian, my so-called coach. I wasn't going to let the man who had betrayed me dictate how I felt about the sport I loved. The air was crisp as I hit the ball against the wall, reminding myself of the thrill of a good serve and the satisfaction of a perfect volley. It felt liberating to be out there, even if I still felt the weight of the betrayal looming over me. As I practiced, a thought struck me. What if I channeled all this energy and pain into becoming a better player? I had always enjoyed tennis, but I had never taken it seriously. Maybe I could join a league and compete. I could become a champion not just in tennis, but in life. With that newfound purpose, I signed up for a local tennis league. Training became my refuge. I practiced relentlessly, spending hours on the court. I sought out coaching lessons, learned about strategy, and even connected with other players. I started to feel a sense of camaraderie with my fellow competitors, people who were passionate, driven, and supportive. It was a world away from the lies and betrayal of my marriage. As I immersed myself in this new endeavor, I began to reshape my mindset. I started eating healthier, working out, and truly taking care of my mental well-being. I let the anger fuel my workouts, pushing myself each day to be better, faster, and stronger. Slowly but surely, I began to notice changes, not just in my technique but in my confidence. The more I learned about tennis, the more I realized how much I had neglected my own passions while prioritizing someone else's needs. Weeks turned into months, and I found myself in a tournament. The nerves were palpable, but the thrill of competition invigorated me. I hadn't just trained my body. I had trained my mind to handle pressure and focus on my goals. The more I played, the more I saw how far I had come, not just as a tennis player but as an individual. During this time, Lisa and I had minimal communication. She would occasionally text to check in, but I kept my responses short and distant. I was no longer interested in the excuses and lies. I wasn't going to let her drama derail my progress. She eventually tried to come home early one night to talk, but I avoided the confrontation. I had learned to prioritize my own mental space over the chaos she brought into my life. In the weeks leading up to my first tournament, I felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. I was nervous to face off against others and prove to myself that I could compete. But more importantly, I was ready to show Lisa that I was moving on with my life without her. The morning of the tournament, I felt calm. I had trained hard and was ready. As I stepped onto the court, I took a deep breath, letting the atmosphere wash over me. The cheers from the crowd, the sound of the ball being hit, the smell of fresh-cut grass, it all felt intoxicating. I played my heart out that day, rallying against opponents who seemed more experienced. With every point I won, I felt a rush of vindication and empowerment. I made it through the rounds, winning match after match. I could feel the energy of the spectators behind me. With every victory, I was reminded of all the reasons I had chosen this path. I was no longer just Jake, Lisa's husband. I was becoming something more, a champion of my own story. When I finally reached the finals, I couldn't believe it. The adrenaline coursed through my veins, and I was ready to give it my all. As the match concluded and I emerged victorious, A wave of emotion washed over me. I felt like I had reclaimed my life in that moment, like I had triumphed over the betrayal that had threatened to consume me. Returning home that night, I was on cloud nine. I had a trophy in hand, a symbol of my hard work and resilience. I walked through the door expecting Lisa to be awake, but the house was quiet. I could only chuckle softly at how this victory marked a new chapter in my life. I had transformed pain into power, and there was no going back. As the night wore on, I stared at the trophy on the table, reflecting on everything that had happened. I thought about the lies, the hurt, and the anger. But more importantly, I thought about the growth. I was done letting my marriage define me. I was stepping into a new role, one where I made choices that benefited me. It was time to show Lisa who I really was and what I was capable of. The champion in me was ready to take on whatever came next. The weeks following my victory in the tournament were both exhilarating and transformative. I felt like a different person, energized by my newfound identity as a champion. The days blurred together as I practiced, trained, and connected with the tennis community. I was no longer just Jake, the passive husband. I had become Jake, the tenacious competitor. But the joys of my triumph came with a gnawing reality. I still had to face Lisa. After weeks of minimal contact, I realized it was time for a confrontation. I needed to express everything I had been holding back, to confront her about the affair with Brian, and to assert myself in this relationship. I wanted her to understand that I was done being the doormat. One evening, I decided to sit down with her, armed with a level head and a heart ready to speak the truth. I waited until she got home from work, and I could see that she was trying to play it cool, but the tension was palpable. I took a deep breath and gestured for her to sit down. "Lisa, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady but firm. She nodded, her face a mixture of worry and annoyance, as if she thought I was overreacting again. "What is it, Jake?" she replied, crossing her arms defensively. "I want to talk about us, about what happened. About Brian," I said, watching her expression shift. "There." It was again the flush of anger and denial. Jake, not this again. I told you it meant nothing. Brian is just a coach. You're blowing things out of proportion." She snapped back, her tone dripping with irritation. I held my ground. "You think I'm blowing it out of proportion? I walked in on you too, Lisa. I saw how close you were, and you're telling me that was just innocent practice. I want you to be honest with me for once." She opened her mouth to retort, but I continued, determined not to let her deflect. "I've worked hard to better myself, to become someone I can be proud of. And you've been lying to me, playing me for a fool. Do you even understand how that feels?" Her eyes narrowed, and for the first time I could see the cracks in her composure. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Jake," she said, her voice softer now, but it sounded rehearsed. "I was just feeling lost. You were so focused on your work, and I felt neglected." "Neglected? That's your excuse for cheating on me?" I shot back, disbelief flooding my voice. "I was focused on building a life for us, but you couldn't talk to me about it. You had to run off to my coach and betray me." She looked away, and I could see the guilt creeping into her expression. "I was confused, Jake. It was a mistake. I thought I could fix things on my own. Fix things by sleeping with someone else." I was incredulous. "You don't fix a marriage by running away from it." She finally met my gaze, and I could see tears brimming in her eyes. "I know I messed up. I'm sorry. I really am. Can't we just move forward? We can make this work again, I promise." But deep down, I knew that wasn't what I wanted. I had spent so long trying to make things work that I had lost sight of what I needed. I realized I didn't want to rebuild a life with someone who wouldn't fight for it alongside me. "Lisa, I've changed. I've become a champion in my own right, and I refuse to be tied to the guilt and betrayal that you brought into my life. I won't be your emotional crutch anymore." Her face fell, and for a moment I felt a pang of sadness. I had loved this woman, and it hurt to see her in pain. But I couldn't let sympathy cloud my judgment. I had to prioritize my own growth over her pleas. "Maybe it's time we took a break," I suggested, feeling resolute. "Not just for you to sort out your feelings, but for me to find my own path without you dragging me down." "What do you mean, a break? Is that it?" she asked, incredulous. I could see her trying to process what I was saying. "I mean it, Lisa. I need to focus on myself," I said. I want to see what life looks like without the burden of your betrayal. I can't go back to how things were. I deserve more than your half-hearted attempts to fix this." The silence hung between us, thick and heavy. Lisa's face twisted into a mix of fear and anger. "You're making a huge mistake, Jake. You don't know what you're throwing away." "I know exactly what I'm throwing away," I replied. "A relationship built on lies and deceit. I want to build something real, something that isn't rooted in fear or betrayal, something that respects me and my journey." With that, I stood up, the finality of the conversation settling in. I walked out of the room, leaving her behind, and suddenly there was a sense of relief washing over me. I had confronted her, I had laid it all out, and I was ready to move forward. The days following our discussion were surreal. I felt lighter, freer. I began to embrace my new life even more fully, diving deeper into tennis and surrounding myself with supportive friends who lifted me up. I focused on training, competing, and enjoying life without the baggage of my previous relationship. I started to find my footing, gaining confidence not just on the court, but off of it as well. And when I secured a spot in a larger regional tournament, I felt an exhilarating sense of accomplishment. I was proving not only to myself but to everyone around me that I was capable of greatness. And as I prepared for the upcoming competition, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was finally on the right path. But even as I thrived, there were moments when Lisa would reach out. Sometimes I would see her name pop up on my phone, and I'd feel a mix of emotions: guilt, anger, and even a hint of nostalgia. I had to remind myself that the past didn't define me anymore. I was ready to embrace my future, and nothing could hold me back. The regional tournament was fast approaching, and excitement coursed through me like electricity. It felt surreal that I had gone from a man reeling from betrayal to someone poised to compete at a higher level. My training sessions intensified, and I found myself surrounded by an amazing support network of fellow players, friends, and coaches who believed in my potential. Each day brought a renewed sense of purpose and focus. On the day of the tournament, I woke up early, my pulse racing with anticipation. I dressed in my favorite tennis gear, a bright red shirt and black shorts. The colors felt vibrant, symbolizing my newfound confidence and determination. I could feel the energy of the day already buzzing in the air. I arrived at the venue, and the atmosphere was electric. Players of all skill levels were warming up on nearby courts, the sounds of tennis balls being struck echoing around me. As I warmed up, I spotted a few familiar faces from the local league. They were cheerful, encouraging me and sharing their experiences. We traded stories of the challenges we faced, and I felt camaraderie that I had sorely missed. It was a reminder that I was not alone in this journey, and I felt a surge of strength from the connections I had built. When my first match began, the nerves hit me like a wave. I stepped onto the court and faced my opponent, a seasoned player known for his aggressive style. The crowd watched closely, and I could feel their energy propelling me forward. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I had trained hard for this moment. As the match unfolded, I found my rhythm, channeling my emotions into each serve and volley. The first set was intense. My opponent was relentless, but I held my ground, focusing on the fundamentals I had practiced relentlessly. With every point I won, I felt the adrenaline rush through me, pushing me past any lingering doubts. I won the first set 6-4, and as I walked to my bench, I could see my friends cheering me on from the sidelines. Their support fueled me further. As the second set began, I felt a shift. My opponent came back with a fierce determination, and I found myself pushed to my limits. I could hear the crowd rallying behind us, but I wanted to stay focused. The intensity of the game heightened, and I could feel my heart racing as I fought for every point. But just as I started to feel the pressure mounting, something unexpected happened. In the middle of the match, I caught a glimpse of Lisa standing near the bleachers, her eyes fixed on me. I hadn't seen her in weeks, and a wave of mixed emotions washed over me. Part of me felt anger, while another part felt a strange sense of nostalgia. It was a reminder of what I was fighting against. I could feel her gaze, and for a moment it threw me off my game. I double faulted on my serve, and frustration bubbled within me. I took a deep breath to steady myself, reminding myself of everything I had endured. I had worked hard to get to this point. I wouldn't let her disruption derail me. With newfound determination, I forced myself to put Lisa out of my mind and focus solely on the match ahead. I began to dominate the court again, reclaiming my rhythm and finding my groove. The rallies became intense as I fought tooth and nail for every point. And just like that, I won the second set 6-3, securing my spot in the semifinals. As I walked off the court, I felt a mix of exhilaration and exhaustion. The adrenaline pumped through my veins and I couldn't help but smile. I had come so far from the devastation I had experienced just months before. It was a cathartic moment, realizing that I had reclaimed my life, not just my love for tennis but my sense of self. Before my next match, I was approached by one of my fellow competitors, a guy named Steven. He had been watching my matches closely and offered some tips. "You've got a great game, man. Just keep your focus and don't let anything distract you," he said, his friendly demeanor putting me at ease. As we chatted, I heard a familiar voice call my name. I turned, and there stood Lisa, looking nervous and out of place. She approached tentatively, her eyes searching mine for a sign of forgiveness or understanding. "Jake, can we talk?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I felt a surge of tension. Part of me wanted to turn away, but another part was curious about what she had to say. "What do you want, Lisa?" I replied, keeping my tone steady. I wanted to apologize. I've been thinking a lot about everything and I realize how badly I messed up. Watching you play today made me realize how much you've grown. "I'm proud of you," she said, her expression earnest. "Proud of me," I echoed incredulously. "You didn't support me when I needed it the most. You hurt me, Lisa, and now you're here acting like everything is fine." "I know, I messed up, but I want to be a part of your life again if you'll let me," she replied, desperation creeping into her voice. I looked at her, trying to gauge her sincerity. Part of me wanted to believe her, but then I remembered the betrayal. Why should I trust you again? You've shown me who you really are, and I'm not sure I can go back to that. "I understand," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I just want a chance to make it right. I don't want to lose you, Jake. You mean so much to me." As I stood there, I felt caught between my past and my present. I had made incredible strides without her, yet part of me missed the connection we had shared. But then I reminded myself of the strength I had found through this journey, the champion I had become. "I appreciate you coming to talk to me, Lisa, but right now I can't think about us. I have to focus on this tournament and my own path. I've worked too hard to let anything distract me," I said, my resolve firm. With that, I turned and walked away, heading back to the courts for my next match. I could feel Lisa's eyes on me, but I didn't look back. I had made my decision, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next. As I stepped onto the court for my semi-final match, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was battling not just for a trophy, but for my own self-worth and the life I wanted to lead. The crowd cheered, and I could see my friends supporting me from the sidelines. This was my moment, and I was determined to seize it. From that point on, I poured everything I had into the match, focusing solely on the game. With each rally, I felt my confidence build, and I knew I was on the brink of something extraordinary. I had risen from the ashes of betrayal, and now I was ready to claim my victory. The semi-final match started with palpable energy in the air, the crowd buzzing with excitement. I could feel my heart pounding as I took my position on the court, ready to face my next opponent, a player who had a reputation for being fierce and relentless. But I felt a new sense of strength coursing through me, a reminder of everything I had overcome in the past few months. As the match began, I focused on every serve, every volley. The rhythm of the game began to flow, and I quickly settled into my zone. My opponent came at me hard, launching powerful shots that tested my skills, but I responded with agility and determination. Each point was a battle, and with every rally I could feel the adrenaline surging through me. The first set was intense. I fought tooth and nail, making strategic plays and executing my shots with precision. When I won the first set 6-4, I felt a rush of euphoria. The cheers from the crowd echoed in my ears, reminding me of the journey I had taken to get to this point. I was no longer the passive husband living in the shadow of betrayal. I was a competitor, a champion in my own right. As the second set commenced, fatigue began to creep in. My opponent was relentless, pushing me to my limits. With each game, I could feel the pressure mounting, and I had to dig deep to maintain my focus. But I recalled the conversations I had with my friends, the encouragement that had fueled my journey. I pushed through, fighting for every point. After a hard-fought battle, I managed to pull through, winning the second set 6-3. With my victory, I secured a spot in the finals. I was ecstatic, but I also felt a twinge of disbelief. Just months ago, I had been drowning in betrayal and sadness. Now, I was standing tall as a semifinal winner, preparing for a chance at the championship title. As I left the court, the adrenaline was still coursing through my veins. I could see my friends from the tennis community gathered to celebrate my victory, and their smiles filled me with gratitude. I had forged connections that uplifted me, and I realized how important it was to have a support system in my life. But amidst the celebration, my thoughts drifted back to Lisa. I had seen her in the crowd earlier, and I couldn't shake the mix of emotions I felt at her presence. I had made my choice to focus on my journey, but part of me still grappled with the memories of what we had shared. I knew I had come too far to let her back into my life too easily. After a brief celebration with my friends, I found a quiet corner of the venue to collect my thoughts. I needed to reflect on everything that had happened. I pulled out my phone and stared at it, contemplating whether or not to reach out to her. But I stopped myself. What good would it do? Instead, I decided to focus on the upcoming final match. I spent the next few hours visualizing my game plan, strategizing how I would approach my opponent. I had learned the importance of mental preparation, and now I was more determined than ever to channel my focus into achieving my goal. The final match was set for the next day, and I barely slept that night. My mind was racing, my heart pounding with anticipation. This was my chance to show everyone, including myself, what I was capable of. I was ready to compete for the championship title. When I arrived the following morning, the atmosphere was electric. The stands were packed with spectators, and the energy was infectious. I felt exhilarated, but there was also a sense of calm that came from knowing I had worked hard to get here. I had transformed my pain into power, and now it was time to unleash it. As I stepped onto the court for the finals, the nerves returned, but they were a familiar feeling. I took a deep breath, reminding myself of all the training, all the sacrifices I had made. I was here to compete, not just against my opponent but against the doubts that had once plagued me. The match began and I came out strong, striking the ball with precision. My opponent was fierce and skilled, but I matched his intensity. The exchanges were fast and furious, pushing both of us to our limits. As we battled through the first set, I could feel the crowd behind me, their cheers fueling my determination. I fought hard, and after a grueling showdown, I won the first set 6-4. The rush of victory surged through me like a tidal wave. I could see my friends on the sidelines cheering wildly, and I felt a swell of pride. But as the second set began, my opponent stepped up his game. He came at me with everything he had, and I could feel the pressure mounting. The intensity was palpable, and I started to feel exhaustion set in. Every point mattered, and I had to remind myself to stay focused on my strategy. In a pivotal moment, I found myself down a break, and I could feel doubt creeping into my mind. It was a turning point, and I knew I had to rally. I took a deep breath, visualizing the champion I had become. I remembered the pain I had endured and how far I had come. I could not let this moment slip away. With renewed determination, I fought back, reclaiming my composure. I began to make smarter plays, mixing up my shots and using my speed to my advantage. The crowd rallied behind me, their energy propelling me forward. As I turned the tide, I could feel my confidence returning. With each point I won, I could sense the momentum shifting in my favor. I pushed myself harder, refusing to back down. And finally, after a fierce rally, I sealed the victory with a powerful serve that caught my opponent off guard. I had done it. I had won the championship. As I celebrated my hard-fought victory, I felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. The trophy in my hands was more than just a symbol of success. It represented my journey of resilience and personal growth. I had risen above betrayal and transformed my pain into triumph. In that moment, I realized I was no longer defined by my past. I had become my own champion, forging a new path and embracing a brighter future. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, and I looked forward to the possibilities ahead. As the cheers of the crowd echoed around me, I raised my trophy high, feeling a sense of freedom wash over me. This was my moment, and I was finally ready to seize it. The thrill of victory washed over me as I stood on the podium, the championship trophy gleaming in the sunlight. As the crowd erupted in applause, I couldn't help but let out a joyous laugh. I looked out at the faces of my friends who had supported me throughout this journey, their smiles reflecting the pride I felt within. It was a moment I had worked tirelessly for, a testament to my growth and resilience. As I stepped down from the podium, a wave of emotions hit me. I was overwhelmed by a sense of closure, not just from the tournament, but from everything I had faced over the past several months. I had transformed my pain into power, and it felt liberating to finally break free from the weight of betrayal that had once held me down. While celebrating with my friends, I felt a familiar presence approach. I turned to see Lisa standing at the edge of the crowd, her expression a mix of regret and admiration. I hadn't expected her to be there, especially after our last encounter. I felt a surge of emotions rise up inside me, anger, resentment, but also a strange sense of understanding. She had witnessed my journey, and in that moment I could see that she recognized the man I had become. "Jake," she said, her voice barely rising above the noise of the celebration. "I just wanted to say congratulations. You played phenomenally out there." "Thanks, Lisa," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. I had no idea what to expect from her. Part of me wanted to celebrate my victory without the shadow of our past hanging over us, while another part was curious about her intentions. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she continued, her eyes searching mine for a connection. "I realize now how much I hurt you. I was selfish and I took you for granted. I see you now, who you are and who you've become. I'm sorry for everything." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I felt a mix of sympathy and frustration. "I appreciate your apology, Lisa, but you have to understand that I can't go back to what we had. I've done too much work on myself to let that relationship drag me down again." "I know," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "I just wanted you to know how proud I am of you and that I've been working on myself too. I know it doesn't make up for what I did, but I'm trying to be better." I took a moment to process her words. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, but I also knew that trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt overnight. "It's good to hear that you're trying to become a better person," I said carefully, "but I need to focus on my life now and what lies ahead." She nodded, looking down at the ground. "I understand. I just wanted to let you know that I'll always care about you. I hope you can find happiness, Jake." With that, she stepped back, allowing me to continue my celebration with friends. As I joined them, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I had faced her, confronted my past, and emerged stronger than ever. I realized that part of moving on was acknowledging the pain but not allowing it to define my future. The week following the tournament was filled with excitement and reflection. I basked in my victory, celebrated with friends, and even received some calls from local news outlets wanting to interview me about my journey. I felt proud to share my story, not just about the championship but the personal growth that had led me there. I began to explore new opportunities, eager to see where this newfound confidence would take me. I signed up for more tournaments and connected with other players in the community. As I immersed myself in the sport, I found joy in the competition and the camaraderie that came with it. And yet, I realized that my life wasn't just about tennis. It was about rediscovering who I was outside of the relationship I had left behind. I began to explore new hobbies, activities, and even started volunteering at a local youth center, teaching tennis to kids. It felt fulfilling to give back and share my love the sport with others. In this process, I learned to embrace vulnerability and openness. I started dating again, cautiously but with an open heart. I met new people, formed meaningful connections, and experienced the excitement of new relationships. I was no longer the man defined by betrayal. I was a man ready to embrace love on my own terms. Eventually, I found someone who appreciated my growth and recognized my journey. Her name was Mia, and she was kind, supportive, and full of life. We bonded over mutual interests, and I could feel a spark that reminded me of the excitement I once felt with Lisa. Only this time, it was built on honesty and mutual respect. As I moved forward, I often reflected on the lessons I had learned through the pain and betrayal. I realized that it's okay to let go of relationships that no longer serve you, and it's vital to prioritize your own happiness. I had become a champion not just in tennis but in my life, learning to stand tall and embrace the future with hope. From that experience, I learned that while betrayal can cut deep, it can also lead to profound growth. I wanted to share my story as a reminder to others that you can rise from the ashes of heartbreak, reclaim your identity, and forge a path of your own. Life is full of unexpected turns, but it is how we respond to those challenges that defines us. So, here I am, standing tall, a champion in every sense of the word. I have learned to love myself again and to embrace the opportunities that life throws my way. I look forward to what the future holds, knowing that I am ready to face it head on, with passion and purpose.